sleep and somebody wakes you up,
Mm.
and then they bombard you with all these questions at
Mm.
1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, when it's
We're
deep
not
sleep.
prepared at all.
Yes, when you're not prepared. So they attack you when you're least prepared in front
Mm.
of people sometimes, when they know that you're trying to save face and not be embarrassed. So
Mm.
you won't act out at that point in time.
Yeah.
So they actually embarrass you in front of people and belittle you in front of others.
And then they play the victim?
And then they play the victim, that you made them do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's because of you that I behave this way.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yes.
another pattern I've seen that they manipulate you in such a way that it makes you angry, it makes you frustrated,
Yes.
and it makes you raise your voice in front of people. And then people are thinking, oh, poor guy, he has to put up with
Yes.
this person. Although it's the opposite, she has to put up with that.
That is so true.
Mhm.
And they even go as far as calling witnesses, threatening to
Wow.
call witnesses. I'll call so and so, and we'll verify that you said such and such and such.
Hmm.
And we find that you also see that the abusers or gaslighters will project their own image onto you. So if they are doing certain things to
Yeah.
you or to others, they come now and they tell you you are doing this. It's because of
Mhm.
you. For
Yeah.
instance, if they're talking to somebody who they're not supposed to speak to, they will come now and accuse you
Yeah. Yeah.
of doing such. And then
Yeah.
you start to question yourself as to whether or not you actually did, or whether or not you were actually seen at a certain place.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's when you start doubting your own self because you
Yes.
start believing what you're told all the time. And you start losing trust in your own self. You start believing in yourself. And that makes the narcissist even more powerful and
Yes, it does.
courageous, as you may say.
Because they want to see you break. So when you reach the breaking point where you're actually literally in tears, then
Mm,
they come now and they are like your savior, your knight in shining armor, come on the white horse to save the damsel in distress. So they
mm.
come now to comfort you and saying, yes, I understand, and I'm so sorry, and I'm always here for you, and all these different things.
Oh, yeah.
So while you're caught up in the whirlwind of those emotions now,
Mm,
because you're seeking comfort, you gravitate to that,
yeah.
although the person who's comforting did the damage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this pattern kind of repeats, but for people who are in such kind of relationships, they fail to understand, they fail to spot the signs. And by the time they
Yes,
do realize, I guess it's kind of late.
it is. And at that point in time, it's like a mad dash to get out, because they
Oh,
realize
yeah.
that they are really suffocating in the relationship.
Mm,
And by that time, nobody tends to believe them. A lot of people are doubting what they are saying, because the gaslighter or the abuser projects this pure image on the outside. To everybody else, they are good and kind and hardworking, and
mm,
doing a lot of good,
yeah,
when
yeah.
and on the inside, they are the total opposite. So when you go to somebody for help, they will
Yeah.
not believe you, because they doubt that this is the same person you're describing.
Mm, mm,
So some of the things I could recommend,
yeah.
um that I've seen worked for some people, is that they start to like record
Yeah.
instances and conversations.
Yeah.
So whether they are audio recording, or they are literally writing in a journal, taking notes.
Mm,
If they had, because sometimes you get gaslighted in conversations as well,
yeah.
on the
Mm,
WhatsApp, on text messages. So they tend to snap these things, save these things, and you can send it to people you trust, people
mm,
are supporting you, so that
yeah.
when the time comes,
Mm,
you have the evidence to show that this is what is really going on.
yeah.
Because by that time, the gaslighter or the abuser cannot remember what they said,
Mm. And you
because
know
they
what
have.
this is? Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned this, Fatwa, because this is something that can really help and benefit a lot of people who are trying to get out of a relationship where they are, married to a narcissist, or they have a narcissist work colleague or a manager or a sibling or a parent, and
Mm-hmm.
people don't believe them. When they do share the experience, nobody believes them, nobody wants to trust them, and they think that they're just making it up, they're just attention seekers or what have you. But like you said, if you record the evidence, whether the text messages or videos or photographs, then that can really make people understand what the reality is, what the situation is really is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And eventually the gaslighter or the abuser reveals themselves,
Mm,
because sooner or later they cannot keep up with their own stories.
right.
Once the person gets support, they realize they're losing their grip.
Mm,
So what? So if the victim builds up the courage to leave,
yeah. Yeah.
and they get that support base to help them, because you have to be patient with them while they are trying to leave, because they will start to doubt themselves whether they should stay, whether they
Mm,
should go, what
yeah.
others would think. Does he really love me? Does she really care for me? I think she does. I think he does, because he does this and that for me.
Mm,
So you have to be patient with them first of all, and show them the signs as well. This is what he's doing, this is what she's saying. And but they take a while, but when they are ready, you
yeah.
have to be there to support them. You have to be there for them, because this is a big step.
Mm,
And once the abuser realizes that they are losing their grip, they begin to get kind of crazy themselves.
yeah. Yeah.
So they would come at you 1 minute and they would say, "I'm so sorry, please come back."
And it's just a five-letter word. It's not really an apology, is it?
Exactly, because they continue to do the exact same thing again.
Okay.
So when they realize that they're not getting the response they are getting from you,
Mm,
then they flip out,
yeah.
and that ugly side start to rear its head. And
Mm,
if you have somebody who is intervening, they may be nice to the person who is intervening in the beginning. And once certain questions come and the victim begins to gain more and more strength to stand
mm,
their ground, the ugly begins to come out. And then
right.
you see the true abuser.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that too in a lot of cases where they've tried to seek support from the local community, or a faith leader or an imam or a sheikh, and they are in their best behavior. They're really
Yes,
calm and polite, and they seem to be in control. And the person who's trying to mediate, the person who's trying to reconcile, they're like, there's nothing wrong with this person. Why are you saying
hmm,
that he or she is gaslighting or is a troublemaker? So that's where the evidence comes in.
definitely. That's when the evidence comes in,
Mm,
because they begin to look at you like you are the one that's causing all the drama.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And maybe it's something you said, or maybe it's something you didn't do. Maybe you weren't giving the person their right.
Mm,
Maybe they were in their right to treat you that way, because you are like this and this and this.
yeah.
So you tend sometimes see within a community structure a lot of patriarchy taking place, where you know the men would tend to believe the men, and the women not so much supportive, so you tend to feel like you're alone.
Mm, yeah.
So it's only when we really begin to live up to the Quranic code, that men are the maintainers of women, that they tend to protect all women. All
Mm,
men protect all women. So that's where the intervention and the objective intervention needs to come in.
yes.
Yeah.
So, Fatwa, I'm curious to know, when did you recognize the signs and the symptoms? When did you realize that, oh my gosh, this is happening to me, or I'm being gaslighted? When did you come to that realization, and how?
It was after a lot of broken promises,
Mm,
a lot of it said you're going to change your behavior now, and the same behavior came back, and you begin to go back in memory,
yeah.
and you begin to chat. Okay, this happened at this point in time. This said that this happened then, but I wasn't there at that point in time. So you
Mm,
begin to record, and after a while, you begin to feel emotionally tired and drained. And when you
yeah.
catch yourself, you realize, but wait, not one single promise has been
Yeah.
fulfilled.
Mm.
And I am here feeling empty. I'm feeling emotionally tired. And this person is normal, going about their business normal. So then you tend to realize this is not good for me because it's affecting me emotionally. It's affecting my job. I remember it's started to affect me in the workplace and my productivity,
Mm.
because you tend to know it's all in your head. So you're trying to figure out the scenario while you're at work,
Yeah.
and further down the road, like probably a week after, when you're reviewing what you did, you recognize you made a lot of mistakes, and
Mm.
simple mistakes that could have cost you, your position at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the time when you get a moment to reflect and think what's happening in your life. Because when you're in that environment, that toxic environment, you don't get the chance, you don't get a moment to reflect on things or take into account everything that's happening. But when you're away from that environment where you're, exposed to a different kind of situation, that's when you think, okay, this is what's actually happening.
Yes, because at that point in time, you tend to say enough is enough. I've had
Mm,
enough, so
yeah.
I need to remove myself from this. But
Yeah.
it's not an easy journey to remove yourself, because even after that, you tend to want to ask, was that the right decision I made? Because you're remembering all the comforts and the good things that were given to you.
Mm,
And so at that point in time, you're not remembering all the bad stuff. So that is when your support network comes in to remind you,
mm,
this is what you were going through when you were there. Yes, there were good things, but the majority wasn't all good, because you tend to doubt, what are my next steps? How am I going to be viewed by others?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's no consistency in the behavior or attitude. When they're being nice, it's for a short period. It doesn't live for long. And then they're back to square one. You're back to being vulnerable. You're back to being upset and uneasy. And I think that outweighs the good times that you spend with that person.
Yes, because as soon as the gaslighter or the abuser gets whatever their objective was to get
Hmm.
at that point in time, they immediately stop being nice and
Oh yeah.
revert to how they really are.
Hmm. So how did you get out of that? I mean, did you try to kind of seek help in the sense that, okay, let's work on it, let's go for counseling or, couple therapy, let's give that a chance.
Yes, they usually you try that aspect.
Mm.
They would tell you, well, nothing is wrong with me. If something is wrong with you, then you go and seek help.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm
that's
I'm
classic.
perfectly fine.
Oh
I'm
yes, that's a
perfectly
classic
fine.
one. Hmm.
I'm perfectly fine. So then you go and seek help. But even within the counseling construct, they want to tell you what to say. So they want to have their own meeting before the meeting to tell you, okay, so this is what we're going to say, okay? We are
Wow.
going to, if they ask us this, you are
Mm.
going to say that.
So it's all
So they
scripted.
scripted, that's correct. Because they want to portray this, this whole fairy tale scene, and but then within the meeting now they flip it on you
Oh yeah.
without you even knowing. So while they try to script it with you before, within the meeting now, they throw you like curveball. So
Mm.
you're like, they like telling the person, well, this is what she did, or this is what he does,
Mm.
and you're there sitting on, in amazement, like because it threw you off guard.
Yeah.
But then you don't want to run the risk of saying anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
because after the meeting has finished
Mm.
and everybody disperses, you are now left with your abuser.
Oh yes. And
And that
that's
is
the
the
scary
fear of
part.
most people. Yes, that's what they fear the most.
Because you know what the consequences are going to be if you don't abide by the perpetrator.
Yes. So that's why it takes and I will continue to reiterate, it takes a strong support network, because
Mm.
sometimes somebody literally has to go and pull you out of that relationship
Yeah.
or that
Yeah.
situation, or even if it's medical gaslighting, tell you, no, let's go for a second or third opinion. No, that doesn't sound right. No,
Mm,
that environment is not good for you. And literally have to pull you away. So it's only when you're away from the environment, you begin to compare how you were feeling while you were in that situation to how
mhm,
you were feeling out of it.
yeah. They also say that gaslighting usually happens in a power dynamic and it's not always intentional or malicious. Is that true?
Well, sometimes it
Mm,
is, but majority of time they do want all of the power.
yeah.
So sometimes gaslighters have been victims of abuse themselves.
Mm,
So that is the only way they know how to relate within a relationship, within a friendship, because that was done to them. So they believe that that is normal. They themselves went through a bit of trauma, and they themselves have to go through healing. So if they have not gone through that entire thing, then it just projects onto others
mm.
as normal behavior,
Because I
because they
think,
this go
yeah,
ahead.
go on, please finish. Yeah.
I said they see nothing wrong with what they are doing. They actually feel justified that
Mm,
it's within their right to say or do or act in that way.
yeah. And I can see how that can affect the other family members or children if there are children involved, because they learn this kind of behavior from their parents unconsciously, and then they don't take it into account that this is a form of emotional abuse or this is a form of manipulation. They think it's normal, to act like that. It's okay to
Yeah.
invalidate other people's feelings and to tell someone that you're losing it or you're crazy. It wasn't that big a deal. And I think that they use that language, they learn that language, and then they use that language with their friends and their social circle and their relationships when they turn into adults.
Because eventually they explode onto the children as well, you know.
Mm,
They tend to have outbursts if they're not getting their way with the victim,
yeah.
and the children as well become victims of the abuse, but mostly verbal abuse,
Mm,
because they are angry at losing that bit of control with the victim. So they
yeah.
need to take it out on somebody or
Yeah.
in some place.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think it's quite common for a lot of people to be in a state of denial, or they may justify the perpetrator's behavior. And I can see how that can really impact someone for life, because you don't even realize.
Being the of not being the victim anymore, but being the victor,
Hmm,
because you would have gained victory over the entire situation, and moved out of that space that you were in, and
yeah.
move into a better frequency where you could attract better, you feel better, you
Hmm,
worship better. Because when you're in a situation of abuse, whether
yeah.
it's verbal, gaslighting, physical,
Yeah.
it affects your worship, it affects your your spirituality
Definitely.
in your Muslim setting.
Yes.
And what's what's the use? Why am I here in the first place? So it
Yeah.
really takes somebody with
So may gaslight someone all the time.
yes, do as you're told, because they take that idea of leadership to a whole different level, to
Wow.
a toxic level. That
Mm,
leadership is not in your Muslim setting.
yes.
And what's what's the use? Why am I here in the first place? So it
Yeah.
really takes somebody within your community to show you that love and appreciation and that
Mm,
support, to get you to move to that space where you would maintain your religion, because that's most at that point in time is it's actually a test as well for
yes.
both parties. They
Mm,
tend to not be able to have that cutoff point.
all the time.
Yes, do as you're told, because they take that idea of leadership to a whole different level, to
Wow.
a toxic level. That
Mm.
leadership is not about
Book that really blew my mind. And he said that a lot of people in top positions, who have like authority, CEOs and chairmen and trustees and board of directors, they're often narcissists. And it makes perfect sense why, because they are always surrounded by people who are always like, yes, sir, you know, yes, we'll do it right away. And they kind of, I think their mind tends to get programmed in a way that even when they go home with their spouses or partners or children or siblings, they're still in the same kind of mindset where everyone must revolve around them, do as they're told. And yeah.
Yes, because even in that setting of the corporate setting, if
Mm.
one person does something that the manager or the CEO doesn't um approve of, they
Yeah.
literally kind of disown them at that point in time, pretend that they don't exist. And so everybody else who wants to be in that leader's favor would do the same thing to that person, treat them like an outcast. So you
Mm.
tend to find when you come into the home, sometimes those tactics as well are employed, where you have the you know the silent treatment,
Mm.
which is also a form of abuse in
Oh,
itself.
yes. Yes. Yeah.
Because I see the silent treatment as so much abuse, because that person now who is on the other end of that silent treatment is going through a whole range of emotions, and they're wondering what they did wrong, if they're not good enough, and all these things.
Mm.
And so you tend to now go to apologize for something that you didn't do,
Yes.
just for the sake of peace or to get back into their good graces. So you take the brunt of whatever it is when it wasn't your fault to begin with.
You are absolutely right, sister, when you say that neglect and the silent treatment is also a form of abuse, and it's a manipulative technique that perpetrators use. And yes, the impact is very, very damaging, especially on young people, on children, where they experience it from a parent, where the parent goes without talking to them for like days and weeks, and then they resort to unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I see this a lot in our community, where in fact a lot of brothers who are being gaslighted by their spouses or someone at workplace, they start smoking, or they start taking drugs, or they use substance as a way of coping with the pain that they are experiencing psychologically.
Yes, and we see that even within the marriage construct, that either partner withdraws themselves from performing the rights
Mm,
of the other spouse. So there's like, okay, well, I'll go and sleep in the living room, or okay, well then I wouldn't give you this, or I wouldn't give you that, or I would withhold myself from you, thinking that that will change the person's mindset and make them, come back into that way of being and thinking that you want them to be.
mm, mm. And this is so un-Islamic, but it's really sad that those who do use this tool, this manipulative strategy, they tend to misuse Islam. They use Islam, the religion, as a tool that, oh, you must obey, you must be submissive, and that's contradictory to the teachings of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Holy Household, because all they showed throughout their life was mercy, compassion, kindness. And when you're being unkind to someone in the name of religion, I think I don't even know what term to use, but this is such a big damage that you do, not to just the Muslim community as a whole, but to the faith itself, because you're misrepresenting it.
Yes, you are. And the thing is, we have been given so many tools
Yeah.
by the Holy Prophet and the Imams in the forms of their duas, and they actually show us how to communicate with each other, how to solve disputes. The Quran itself has
Mm,
everything to show
yeah.
us how to manage every single life situation.
Mm,
But it's
mm,
up to us to use the tools that we were given.
yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me of so many stories from the life of the Holy Household. There were children who were orphans, and they were ridiculed by other children, other people, that, oh, you're an orphan, you don't have a father. And then they would come to Imam Ali alayhi salam, and they would cry, and they would say that, oh, I wish we had a father who would bring us stuff and fulfill our needs and desires. And then Imam Ali used to tell them, don't call yourself an orphan. If somebody says that to you, just tell them Ali ibn Abi Talib is your father.
Hmm.
And we have so many traditions and narrations from their life that just shows that they did the complete opposite of gaslighting.
Yeah, we need to bring back that those we need to put those teachers into practice within our communities,
Yeah.
and we need to actually treat each other like family. Our
Mm.
children, all the children are our children, our women are our women, and we have to
Yeah.
protect them. We have to
Mm.
respect everybody, men, women, children, teenagers, everybody,
Yeah.
and just be like one family.
Yeah, true. Definitely. I can't agree more. Um, any tips, any piece of advice that you can give to people who may be experiencing this right now? What can they do to stop this? What can they do to prevent this from happening in the future?
I would say as soon as you recognize the red flags,
Mm.
take note, observe for a little bit, and if you find that it's not nourishing you or feeding you and it's draining you, then you know that it's not right for you. It's toxic. It's supposed to be blossoming in any form of relationship, be it
Yeah.
friendship, being a social engagement, being it a marriage. And if you find that it's taking away too much from you, then you know that it's not good for you. So
Mm.
you have to be able to plan your exit.
Yeah.
If you're in an abusive situation for a while, you have to strategically and carefully plan your exit,
Mm.
because if you do it right away and like pull the rug out, then
Yeah.
that will cause a different chaos. So you have to take the time, know who are your support networks, work with them in the background to get you situated somewhere in an environment that is safe for you, that is better for you.
Mm.
Um, Always remember to take notes, keep your journals, and so that when you do decide to leave, you have somewhere to go. You
Mm.
have some evidence in case that they come to you and say, well, you were unfair in your treatment to me, and you left the home
Yeah. Yeah.
unjustly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think once someone recognizes the symptom, um, himself or herself, or recognizes that someone else is in a gaslight tango, then I think they need to plan what to do next and think about their own well being, their own safety, and what they can do to stop this from happening again or prevent this from happening again. And like you gave a brilliant example that when you provide evidence or witnesses to the narcissist, it really takes them out of their bubble. When they're exposed to the evidence and the witnesses, that oh, I can't deny that now because it's right in my face. And I'm sure there are so many other subtle ways of doing that to the narcissist, to the gaslighter, so they don't repeat the same pattern over and over again.
Yes, and it's so important to get help for both parties, who are
Mm.
somebody who's objective, that neither party has any sway over, somebody who could objectively look at both of them and say, well, both of you all, I believe you all need to get counseling, or this is the next steps that you need to take,
Mm.
because you always have to try a few times, and even if it doesn't work, you try once, twice, the third time, it's can't work anymore. And for your
Yeah.
own mental health, because sometimes the mental health has been so deteriorated that you need to go and see a professional
Mm.
to help you manage that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we are about to finish our program. If you could give any final piece of message for our audience watching right now.
What I would like to say is that no, you're not going crazy. You are a wonderful individual. Always know that you would always have support, and that you have to be brave enough to take the first step. And it's when we take the first step, because we always fear that it will never work out if we leave. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your biggest supporter. and that he will always find a way. You just have to make the first move, because even though we pray for relief and we pray for change, we always have to make the move. You
Yeah.
have to move, pray and make the move, and then you'll see everything falls into place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you feel that you're constantly questioning yourself, then I think you really need to think what's really happening. Yeah.
Yes,
And social
definitely.
support is so so important. I really, I can't encourage this more. We really need to have a really strong form of social support system. And I think the whole idea of going to masjid for congregational prayers is to form that link, that support, that network with our fellow believers, our brothers and sisters in faith, so that we are there for each other rather than being isolated from the community and not having any form of interaction, because that's going to create so many mental health related issues that by the time you realize, it's going to be pretty long and pretty late.
And there's need for having professionals within the community there, just like you would have a spiritual leader of the community. There needs to be somebody there to take care of people's emotional well-being and mental health as well.
Hmm.
So I would suggest that a lot more communities have a lot more programs geared towards these types of discussions and
Hmm.
geared towards ensuring the mental health and well-being, overall holistic wellness
Yeah.
um, of their people,
Yeah,
of their
I think
members.
you need to start with making small decisions for yourself, and you have to, like I said earlier on, that affirmations are really important. You need to tell yourself that it's okay if you're feeling like this, and give yourself permission to make sacrifice. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel. Don't let anyone else invalidate your feeling or your emotions. You're human, and you have every right to be human. Thank you so much, Sister Fadwa. It was absolutely amazing having you today on the show. And I know it's pretty early in Trinidad right now, but you still took the time out for us. Inshallah, we'll look forward to having you back again on the show. And till then, please look after yourself and all our viewers. Please look after your mental health. And inshallah, we'll meet you again next Saturday with another topic and another brilliant guest. Till then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.